The UN Human Rights Council has just voted to launch an international investigation into violations during the 11-day conflict between Israel and Hamas in Gaza. Human Rights Chief Michelle Bachelet earlier said Israel's airstrikes in densely populated areas could amount to war crimes.
Well, this special session of the Human Rights Council was called after an unprecedented, some have been saying, level of international scrutiny and pressure for action in the wake of the most recent violence in Israel. During that session, we did hear from the Human Rights Chief, Michelle Bachelet, who called for an investigation, saying that Israel and Hamas are both possibly guilty of war crimes for indiscriminate bombing. In the case of Israel, the indiscriminate and disproportionate attack on civilians would be an issue of concern. She said Hamas's indiscriminate rocket fire was also a clear violation of rules of war.
Syrian state TV showed crowds gathered in the capital Damascus on Thursday as President Bashar al-Assad's election victory and his fourth term in power was confirmed. The head of Syria's parliament announced that Assad had got more than 95% of the vote and that turnout was 78%. On his election campaign page, Assad thanked Syrians for their, quote, high sense of nationalism and notable participation. But his opponents and the West have cried foul. The opposition boycotted the vote and said Assad's presidential rivals were deliberately low-key. Ahead of the election, France, Germany, Britain and the US said the vote would not be free or fair. Protests were also staged in Syria's last rebel enclave of Idlib, where hundreds on Wednesday denounced the vote as a charade.
Less than a week after Mount Nyiragongo, one of the world's most active volcanoes, killed dozens and destroyed entire villages, the government has ordered a mass evacuation of Goma city in the eastern part of the Democratic Republic of Congo, fearing a second eruption. The population of an entire city seems to be on the move. Lava flows have already killed dozens of people and caused widespread destruction. The governor of North Kivu province ordered a mandatory evacuation after seismic data showed magma rising beneath Goma city, a sign another eruption could happen at any time.
Our focus now to the Egypt's Suez Canal row, where the container ship that got stuck in the global shipping hotspot is still being held by the canal authorities. In the latest, the canal authorities said that the container ship had struggled to steer due to high speed and size of its rudder. It said that before it became grounded, the ship was traveling at 25 kilometers per hour, when the appropriate speed within the canal is normally 8 to 9 kilometers per hour. Because of the speed, tugboats accompanying the ship were unable to help.
In an effort to right historical wrongs, Germany announced it had reached an agreement with Namibia, officially recognizing its colonial killings between 1904 and 1908 as genocide. Germany also said it would fund a €1.1 billion rebuilding and development programme to benefit the communities affected by the atrocities. The aid is expected to cover infrastructure, healthcare and vocational training projects over 30 years. The German Empire was the colonial power in what was then called German Southwest Africa from 1884 to 1915. In that time, its soldiers brutally repressed several rebellions against land seizures. Historians say German troops killed 65,000 Herero people and 10,000 Namas between 1904 and 1908. Survivors were driven into the desert where many died of thirst or ended up in concentration camps to be used as slave labour.
Three men who helped the jihadists behind the 2017 Barcelona attacks, which killed 16 people, are now behind bars. Mohamed Houli has been sentenced to 53 years, Andres Ukabir to 46, both for offences that include belonging to a terrorist group and manufacturing and owning explosives. But the court said the pair would not serve more than 20 years behind bars, and the sentence can be appealed. A third man, Said Ben Yaza, has been given an 8-year term for collaborating with a terrorist group. The charges relate to an accidental explosion the day before the attacks at a house in a small town 200 kilometers south of Barcelona. Explosives and gas canisters were stored in the building, and Mohamed Houli later told investigators the jihadist cell had been planning attacks on an even greater scale.
Taxi associations at Gqeberha have updated commuters on the latest in their protest action. Protests have spread across the Eastern Cape over unpaid COVID-19 relief funding. The mayor of the Nelson Mandela Bay municipality wants to deploy the army to stop the violence in the area.
Police used pepper spray against farmers protesting France's new agriculture policy in Paris. On top of that, police, who had initially said they were ready to let protesters leave without a fine, then withdrew the offer and issued fines. The incident happened when farmers were protesting outside a job center in Paris. Police resorted to questionable violence in order to clear the protesters from the spot.
Took off, booking it.
Break Omaha, pick me kid, Rafael Peralta, pass ability to launch Hilo ASAP.
Splashing and bearing rain.
Sure. You got 2 minutes, 30 knots.
Keep going, bro. Let's go down.
You're making 10, so we could probably bring that 35 relative. Sir.
Yeah.
We got a lot of white water up there, so 6-foot swells.
Whoa, it's getting close.
Yeah, we have 31 knots sustained wind, topside, gust of 40.
What was splashed? Splashed. Mark bearing and range.
We may well be looking at a true unknown, which is to say intelligently controlled machinery that is not understood to be in the possession of the United States, China or Russia, which are the three most advanced countries in terms of military aviation.